Many financial advisors describe themselves as independent. It's one of the more common things you'll hear in this industry. But when you look at how a number of them are structured, who they work for, and what they're incentivized to recommend, the word starts to lose a lot of its meaning. Today, I want to walk you through the constraints that many advisors operate under, but rarely disclose to people up front, and why those constraints can matter more than most people realize. The first constraint I want to talk about is the most common, but the least discussed. Many advisors work for large integrated financial institutions, firms that have both a wealth management division and an asset management division. The wealth management side has advisors who manage money on behalf of individuals and families. The asset management side manufactures investment products. Think about things like mutual funds, ETFs, alternative investment vehicles, etc. Think about what that structure creates. The same firm that employs your advisor also profits when your advisor puts clients into its own products. That conflict is built into the organizational design, whether anyone intends it or not. What tends to happen in practice is that advisors at these firms work from approved lists that heavily feature their employer's own products. Sometimes this is explicit through quotas or direct incentives. Sometimes it's more subtle through the path of least resistance. Either way, the advisor is choosing from their employer's product lineup rather than evaluating the full market. The problem isn't necessarily that firms' products are bad. Some of them are fine. The problem is that the advisor isn't making recommendations based purely on merit. They're operating within constraints created by who signed their paycheck. And the client sitting across the table typically has no idea that that constraint exists. A truly independent advisor can be completely meritocratic. If one firm has the best large cap equity fund, they can use that. Another firm has a better international bond fund, use that one instead. The only question is what's best for the portfolio and the end client. That's what independence is supposed to mean. Here's a second constraint that many investors have never heard of. Large brokerage firms and wealth management platforms often charge asset managers a fee to be included on their approved list. The SEC has documented this practice extensively in guidance on conflicts of interest. These fees, sometimes called revenue sharing or shelf space fees, can be substantial depending on the platform and the manager. What this means in practice is that asset managers are paying for the privilege of being recommended by advisors that use that same platform. An advisor at one of these firms isn't choosing from the full universe of available investments. They're choosing from a list populated in part by managers who paid to be on it. The firms will typically say they vet everything on the platform and only approve quality managers. May be true, but consider what the structure produces. A smaller manager with a strong track record who can't afford the platform fee doesn't make the list. A larger manager with a big name who's good enough and willing to pay does make the list. The best investment for a specific client situation may never appear as an option because it simply isn't on the platform. The advisor isn't making a bad recommendation. They may genuinely believe in what they're suggesting, but they're working within a system where the available options were shaped by commercial relationships, not purely by investment there. This gets more complicated with private investments. Large financial institutions often have capital markets and investment banking teams that are constantly sourcing, structuring, and distributing deals. When sophisticated institutional investors, like large pension funds, endowments, or large family offices review those deals and pass, those deals don't just disappear. In some cases, they find their way to the wealth management side of the same firm, where they get repackaged and offered to individual clients as exclusive opportunities. The client sitting across the table from their advisor has no way of knowing whether the deal is being presented to them as one that the most sophisticated buyers in the market already evaluated and declined to participate in. They're being told it's an opportunity. They're not being told it's one that the smart money passed on. This doesn't mean every private deal offered through a large institution is bad. That's not the claim. The claim is that the structure creates a conflict worth understanding. When the firm distributing the deal and the advisor recommending it are part of the same organization, the objectivity of that recommendation deserves to be scrutinized. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, put it simply: show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. So what does genuine independence actually require? It starts with no parent company conflicts. The advisor doesn't work for a firm that manufactures its own products or has an investment banking division with deals to distribute. There's nothing in the organizational structure pulling recommendations away from pure merit. It requires open architecture. The advisor can access any investment on the market. If the best option for a client is from a large, well-known manager, use that. If it's from a smaller, specialized firm that never paid a platform fee, they'll use that. The decision is based entirely on what fits the client's situation, and it requires a compensation structure that removes product-level incentives. An advisor paid a flat annual fee makes the same amount regardless of which products they recommend. There's no financial reason to favor one fund over another, one deal over another. The only question is what's right for the portfolio. If you want to understand where your advisor actually stands on any of this, a few questions cut through things quickly. Things like, does your firm manufacture any of the products that you recommend? Do asset managers pay to be on your platform? Can you access any investment on the market, or are there constraints on what you're able to recommend? How does your compensation change based on what you're suggesting I invest in? These aren't adversarial questions. They're reasonable things to know about someone managing a meaningful portion of your financial life. How an advisor responds to them tells you something very important. True independence is rarer than industry marketing would suggest, but it's worth understanding what it actually means and whether the advisor you're working with has independence. If you want to understand how our structure works and whether it makes sense for your specific situation, book a call. The link is in the description. I hope to speak with you soon.